All right, so debugging JavaScript. So the theme of the presentation is Breaking Bad. Anybody seen the show Breaking Bad at all? Anybody out there? So a few people will get the jokes, other people will not, but hopefully you still get to learn something from the presentation. So debugging JavaScript from zero to Heisenberg. So the purpose of this talk is whether you're an entry-level JavaScript developer or you've already been doing it for a number of years, you already kind of know many different things and issues with JavaScript. And those are the Heisenbergs in the room. My name is Chris Morrow. I'm a senior UI developer at a company called Soltech. We're located at Buckhead, right across from Linux. There's my Twitter handle. All right, so how many people have been here? I've been doing JavaScript less than a year. That would probably, okay, so there are a number of people. So you guys are the Walter Whites of the room. You're kind of new to the game. You haven't seen all the really bad, nasty things that JavaScript can throw at you. Maybe haven't been in the trenches as much for debugging JavaScript, but hopefully we can change that tonight. How many people have been doing JavaScript development over 5 years? Over 5 years? So these guys are the Heisenbergs, the Walter Whites in the rooms. Look at who raised their hand and start asking questions, taking contact information from them. All right, so the plan tonight is to talk about some JavaScript best practices throughout, so at least you guys will pick up some things to definitely do and some things not to do ever. We'll discuss breakpoints and the debugging tools. We're actually going to look at some watches, also how to use the dev tools to set up watches, watch expressions. Using the console in a number of different ways, what a call stack is, how to use that, and then we're actually going to look into maybe some custom tools. Probably going to skip the unit testing just because the talk's a little short tonight. So the first thing, a problem with JavaScript is a lot of times there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Some people see what I'm doing there, and what that is there are global variables all over the place. So a common problem with JavaScript is you have variables that are declared, and here's an example. On this line of code, the now variable, and we could imagine this is an external file that you have, which again, this is bad practice to do inline script blocks, but just say this was an external file, and the code was var now equals new date. Then later down here, you load a library, and suddenly in the root, usually libraries do not do this. They have better prices than most, but potentially someone wrote a library and they declared var now on their global scope. Well, they just overwrote your variable, and now that's not the value that you expected. So that's a common problem with JavaScript is, again, global variables, and so we want to avoid those. The quick, easy way, a number of us already know these, but this might be new to some. To declare scope in JavaScript and protect your variables is to wrap it in a function. One way is an anonymous function, and this is a closure where it's basically just an anonymous function that gets executed at the very end, and this code runs. So now, this now is protected in this scope. And if a library gets loaded down at the bottom, it will not overwrite that value. All right, let's see. So a lot of people hate JavaScript. People come from different languages, a lot of object-oriented languages that have classes. There's not an actual class operator. You can create forms of classes in JavaScript, but it works a little bit different. So why do people hate debugging JavaScript? One is, as I already showed you, variables are global in scope. There's no required strong typing. I could say var a equals 32, or I could say var a equals this string in quotes, or single quotes. It doesn't matter. And then to evaluate those, you don't have to actually specify this is a string, this is a number when you're declaring a variable. So that can get a little tricky as well. Cross-browser compatibility, i.e. anybody have a little problems with that. And then also there's not inherent literal classes in the language. So the goal again is debugging can be stressful. there are a number of ways that we can try to pick and choose what's going wrong with our code, and hopefully you'll see some tools today that maybe you haven't used before that'll help you get to the problem quicker. So first we're going to discuss breakpoints. We're going to talk about navigating code. We're going to talk about standard breakpoints. I think, how many people have done breakpoints at all in the debug console? Most people. All right, so we'll talk about standard breakpoints. We'll talk about conditional breakpoints, a little less used. And let me go ahead and go to the code. All right, so let me back out of that. So this is root level, just so it's clear to everyone. I know many people already know this, but in Chrome anyway, the top right, is it cut off? All right, so the top right, you click this menu, you can go to More Tools, and there's where your developer tools are found. So now that I bring that up, your console may or may not default to sources. It may default to elements by default. But if you want to actually debug JavaScript, generally you want to check out the sources panel. Once I click sources panel, and then this top left sources tab, it'll list out all the sources that are loaded on the page. And then I just select the file that I want to debug. So now that that's done, I can click this handle and slide that out of the way just so I can see my code better. And let's see what we know. All right, so the first is a regular breakpoint. So to make a breakpoint, you just click the left side of the gutter beside the number on the gutter. And then I'll refresh the page. Voila, we stopped and we hit a breakpoint. Let me clear out some of this. You're not supposed to see watches yet. All right, so a couple of things with breakpoints. So every time you add a breakpoint, it gets added to the breakpoints panel on the right. Again, depending on the state of your app. I don't think I can close it. Anyway, it lists out the breakpoint and the line number that's listed. Actually gives you the quick line of code. So I'm going to hit that breakpoint. So a lot of people may do this. We go into breakpoint mode. We say, all right, we're hitting here. I want to see when it hits the second function. I don't care about the third. I just want to make sure it does get to the fourth function. So I can run my code. I'm hitting the play button, which is the continue, and that really just executes the script, and it jumps to the very next breakpoint that I have in my code. So I'll hit the second function. You notice that now in this code it's going to hit the third function, and then the third function is going to call the fourth function. So I should get to line 27 of the breakpoint, and there hit the other breakpoint. All right, so that's regular breakpoints. One thing on breakpoints is to clear everything out. I want to get rid of all my breakpoints. I have a couple of options. I can right-click in the breakpoints panel. I can remove one breakpoint, remove all, or I can just temporarily deactivate them. In other words, I have some breakpoints in my code that are very important to me. I want to see what's going on, but I just want to disable them for a second so I can run the code, full steam ahead without a case of worse. All right, so we've done a breakpoint. I want to go ahead and show you a conditional breakpoint. And to make a conditional breakpoint, all you do is add a breakpoint, and then you right-click that existing breakpoint. Notice right now it's colored in blue. If I edit the breakpoint, this conditional breakpoint is a conditional. You type in any expression that you want to evaluate. If that expression is true, it will stop at that breakpoint. If it's false, it'll keep on going and won't even stop. So I'm going to type in my number equals 181. So you see here, line 5, I set my number to 181. So it should stop at this breakpoint. Once I hit return, you just hit return or enter. And now it's created, that breakpoint is now orange, showing you that it's a conditional breakpoint. I'm going to go ahead and step through this code. If I refresh the page, it stops there. So the good thing about conditional breakpoints are they are a quick way to evaluate something. Like, am I getting an undefined? Do I have a problem with my code? You can quickly find that problem. The problem with a conditional breakpoint is you can click it, and then suddenly it's gone. It's disappeared. So not a very handy thing to really get back to what I was evaluating. So I'm going to show you a little bit later something that's a little more powerful than conditional breakpoints that you can use a lot easier. Let's see. Let's go back to here. All right, so we've done breakpoints. So I went into a little bit of navigating code, and I used the continue button. That just goes all the way to code until there's another breakpoint. But the next is a step over, and all that does is continue to run through your code. It steps over each line of code, just continues to step through line by line. Much like the step over is the step into. A lot of times if you want to trace everywhere your code goes, you could essentially just use step into. The step into, again, works just like step over, but every time it hits a function call, I'm calling, first function, it'll step into first function, and we'll see that in just a second. And then the last is step out. The only difference, again, is if you go inside of a function, if you click step out, it'll just step out of that function and hit the very next, the next parent scope, whatever gets executed. So let me go ahead and go through that a little bit with you. All right. Okay, so much like we did before, I'm going to just set a breakpoint at the very end. This is the very first call that adds that starts that chain of events where it calls first function, second function, third function. Let's see. Okay, so I hit first function. So I could step over here, but I'm going to go ahead and do step into. So step into will now step into that function call. And if I use step into again, it just goes to the very next line of code. I've used step into another time, and then it goes into the second function. And you can see as I just continue to hit step into, it goes throughout all of the code. Each time it hits a function, it goes inside of that function. So I just was at fourth function, it called it, and now I'm inside of fourth function. And then I can just step out of that and wait on it. Okay. So that was primarily step into. Very similar again. If I stop it right here on the first line of code and I do a step over, it hits the very next line of code down the line of code that's in the file. So again, step over, very next line of code. If I use step over here, notice it just hit the first function at the very end, and now it's done. It's actually outside of the code. So it didn't go inside any of the functions. So again, if you want a quick execution of your high-level stuff, you can do step over, but step into, again, will continue to jump inside of each function that gets called. All right. Let's think we put everything there. All right. So another best practice is don't use meth. It's bad for you. But equally bad is the double equals and then the single equals, the inequality. So the double equals is close. It's not equals. You're not setting a value, but the double equals, this is where we get into the whole strong typing in JavaScript, is if you use double equals, you may get, the quick short answer is don't use it. But some things will evaluate to true that are actually false. Some things will be false that should be true. The key is if you're expecting a string, for example, my number 181, if I know I want it to be a number, the only way to properly evaluate that it's the correct type and it's the correct value is to use triple equals for equality, and then the double equals, or the exclamation point double equals, for inequality. So lock those in. Again, never use the double equals and the single inequality equals. All right, another good book for anybody out there new that haven't read this or others. I mean, Douglas Crockford is a good source to go to. Go ahead and check out the book. It's at least one that go say, yeah, I read it. I grabbed the snippets that I need, things that I need to avoid, and move on. There's a lot of other resources that I'll show at the end of the slides and share these slides with you guys. All right, so let's get into watches. So there's multiple ways to add a watch. So I'm in my watches file, and there are a couple ways. So your watch expressions are any value that you want to kind of monitor. You want to watch it. So one way is to actually go inside the sources. You guys see this all right? No, it's really large. All right, I can select any value, and now that it's selected, I can right-click it and choose Add to Watch. And now it's over here. So right now it's not available. I'm not executing my code. I'm not in the scope of that value. But now that I've put a breakpoint and refresh, I see that my array is recognized. It hasn't been defined yet because this line of code has not been executed. So if I step over into that next call, I've now gone past that line of code. My array has been set, and you can see now it's logged here, the current value, and I can actually expand that and see the values that were set. All right, so that's one way to add a watch. I'm going to delete that. Right-click in the watch expressions, and you can add a watch. Same thing. My array, there it is still. So, and then another way, the final way, is the obvious plus sign. And then just type in the expression, hit return, and there it is. Now, notice this could be anything. I don't have to have something that exists or something that's literal like that. I could actually add an expression like my array.length, or whatever value you want. So you can add anything you want. It's something that you can quickly see what's going on and your own little custom logs. All right, let's see if I left anything out. All right, so I said right-click in the sources panel, a value, click the plus to add, and then you can also right-click in the expressions panel. Scope variables, last thing here, kind of like watches, kind of not, you'll see. So scope variables, when I run my code, anything that's in that scope right now in this function that is declared or going to be declared, even though it hasn't been set yet, it recognizes first functions here, second function, third function. It notices my array hasn't been set. So again, it just shows you local variables, local values that are being set, different objects going on. It's just a quick way, again, to see what's going on at every moment. All right. That's all I want to say on that. Again, we're kind of pressed for time, so I can't go into too much detail. All right. Quick message from our sponsor. If you get in trouble debugging, just call Saul. He'll get you out of trouble. All right. So using the console, how many people have used console.log out there? Console.log. How many console.clears? Console clear. Clear that log. Oh. Gotcha. So here we go. Console.clear. You're gonna like this. It'll save you a lot of messy logs going on. So we've all been here, right? We've used console log, we know our code's working, we've called the first function, yes, third function, fourth function's called, yay, it's still working, right? And then I got to the end of my code. Awesome, console log proved that everything worked. I logged everything out to see what was going on. But then I've got all this mess, right? And then this log could get ridiculous. I know you guys have all seen it and paged through logs, especially if something's constantly being loaded every few seconds. Maybe at some point you might want to see, I don't care about all of this code that happened. I don't want to get rid of my logs. Maybe I still want those for something. But I just want to know what's going on right here, and I want to log that out by itself. So console.clear is the quick way to do that and get the mess out of the way. Skip it. Let me go back to sources. Oh, I've got to edit code now. All right. So console.log. You guys read that all right? Let's see. All right, let's see. So as we go through, the final log is console.log, code ends. If just above that, like I want to just know that everything worked. It's not a console log. Instead of console log, I'll just clear. So now, even though everything else is going to log, I'm going to clear it out, and then the only thing that I should see now is code ends. Go to log. Again, I'll refresh to show you. But again, it shows you that console was cleared, everything else out of the way, and you really just want to focus on what that log was going on. So console.clear is definitely very handy. Let's see. What else? Console.assert. This is awesome. This is the better conditional breakpoint that I mentioned earlier. So console.assert is your own custom error. So something that you know, like I know I'm passing an array of objects. If that array doesn't have anything in it, if it's the length is 0, say, then I want to generate my own error. Like this is going to fail. I might as well not even, go make the Ajax post or whatever else comes after that. So console.assert is your own custom error. Let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So a sample in my code is somewhere here, I think. All right, yep. All right, so my array has 3 objects here. I'm going to purposely break this. So console.assert, as I showed in the slide, at least, it is an expression is the first parameter. So any expression, and this is an expression that you never want to happen. If this happens, it's going to have an error. So then you pass in whatever object. This could be a string, anything you want to write, like this custom error message, anything you want. But I'm passing the length of the array and then any custom string around it. But anyway, that could be any message you want, but the main thing is the first parameter is always the expression you don't want to happen. And if you clear it, if you use console.clear, you will not see it. So, forewarning there. I'll get rid of that console.clear. On the right file. Console.clear. Oh, I've got to break my code. All right, so now I'll set the array to 0 length, and then this value will get hit. So, as I made the assertion, it can never equal 0. And it has 0 items, so now it's logging an error message. And you see it looks just like any other standard error message in your console up here. It shows 1 error, and then it logs it out. And then it actually gives you the stack trace just like another error would give you. So that's console.assert. Again, very handy. You don't want this ever to happen, and then you make your own custom error. All right. Let's see what we have. One more thing here. All right, console.table. This is awesome for Ajax. If you're dealing with a lot of data, you can actually use this for anything you want, but for me, the quick tool is Ajax. If you're going through a lot of JSON data and you want to see, like, I just want to see, like, which people have this email or which users are active or not active, and you want to log that out. Sometimes looking at a big nested JSON is too much to look at. I'm going to kind of compare the two real quick. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to change the code a little bit. Go down to the bottom. And we're going to get rid of that console items. So in my code, what I have is a basic Ajax call. I'm calling an actual local JSON file. I'm loading that data. What's happening on the page is it's loading each item. And then all I want to do is log out that data right here. So again, this can be any data, any object, and you can log it out in many different ways. It'll take an object with any parameters. In this case, it's a JSON object. And I want to show you a little bit of the JSON object just so you can get this a little bit better. But notice that I'm logging name, gender, and email for each of these items. So it takes that item and spits out all of those items in that data set as a table. So now instead of traversing through an infinitely nested JSON file, you can spit out anything. And you could actually go in multiple levels if you wanted to do something different. But again, it gives you one quick, clean, flat way to see your data where you may not want to see all the other parameters that are in the JSON object. So to show everybody else the standard way, and again, note I can manually clear the console with the do not disturb, whatever that sign is, the don't. I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to show you the network. So if you go to the network tab, you can have everything that loads, or I can get specifically to my JSON data with XHR, and I can click that item, and then I can look at the response. So a common thing is a lot of people look at the response and they see everything. You can see we have the name value, we have gender that I was generating, and we have email. And so I was just logging out those few attributes, whereas I didn't want to see everything else. So it's a quick way to see your data instead of just going into the JSON object that's a lot more complex. Let's see. All right. All right, multi-line commands. I'm going to show you multi-line commands, and then I'm also going to show you snippets, and then lastly live editing, and we'll move on to the final bit of the talk. All right, let's see. Multi-line snippets. All right, so multi-line editing. So in the console, you can do any live coding if you want. Let's say var a equals 1. Hit return. Undefined, it's not really returning a value, but if I hit A, it will, and then hit return, it'll log what that value is. So it actually recognizes that A equals 1. Now you also can do another one, var b equals, let's see, var b equals 2. But I know that I want to do a couple commands. I want to see a few things happen and make sure that the value is expected. So I can actually hit shift, you hold down shift and return, and then you got multi-line. You don't have to do it one by one. So now I can say var total equals A plus B. Hit return, that executed, and now I can just trace out what total equals. Just do a one-off. So you notice it's 3. So it actually executed both lines of code, set total to A plus B, and now we have the total at the end. So again, another quick thing, just do multi-line commands, and I'm going to clear the log out. All right, snippets, another great, wonderful thing. So let's see. So to get the snippets, you actually have to have that side panel open, the navigator. And buried over there to the right is snippets. So just like any other IDE gives you, you have snippets that you can use. The ones I use is the ones I don't want to Google all the time, like what jQuery version am I using, or how do I do that custom style console.log, which I'm going to show you guys in just a second. So the first is this styled console log, which is interesting. So one thing in the future reference is if you use a %C anywhere in your log, that recognizes it as CSS, any style you want to pass in. And then if you throw in that %C, if you add a secondary parameter, you can actually style with CSS what the log looks like. So now it's going to be background red with white text. So if I actually click that item, right click it, and I can run it. So now I've got a styled log. It's great when you have a log of all this black text on white background, and then something really bad happens, then you can actually style that console log to really stand out from the rest. So again, that's one snippet. Whenever you bring up this secondary console to get rid of it or to show it, you can hit escape. So escape when you're in the DevTools will show and hide that bottom console. And let's see. So again, the same thing. I click another snippet, jQuery version. It'll log whatever code I write out. Right click it, run, and then it just logs the version. So that's definitely a great thing for console logs that you are always constantly running. Let's see. So let's see. Search. When you have the advanced console, I don't even know what this bottom console is. Anybody know what the bottom, all the time, ready console? So you have the one console that's up here at the top, but it takes you away from some things. Whereas you can look at sources, all kinds of stuff, and then have this bottom console all the time. But anyway, with that advanced console, I didn't know this for a while and was annoyed at Chrome because Firebug did it perfectly, where you could actually search multiple files. If you're looking for a line of code, where did I set var total? I don't know where total is. If I want to look for that, I could actually go to this console, search for it, and it will return all files that have that in it. Whereas by default, you can only search in the file that you have open in the sources panel, if you do a search in this console, it'll list out all file names and all instances of that. So again, that's a global find if you didn't know that that was there. All right, did I miss anything on my things? Live editing, the last thing. So I'm going to get rid of that console. So live editing, a couple of different ways. Obviously, you can do JavaScript. I might show you a little bit of that, but I think we're getting short on time, so I'm going to wrap up in just a couple minutes. So live editing, you can actually move DOM elements around by clicking and dragging. So I'll move that red up to the top, now I can move it down. Just to see how things lay out. Obviously, you can change the style of things. I don't want it to be red, I want it to be green. As you look at the styles, you can change those. Also in the sources, so, and I'm going to close on this. Best practice, always externalize your JavaScript. If you don't, you won't be able to use this feature. If you have an external JavaScript file, you can actually go in and make a live edit to it. Var, my new var equals 0, I can actually go in now, make it 5, and actually save that file. That will actually save the file back to my local hard drive. Yes, I want to replace it. Notice now that I made a save, it's hard to see on the screen, but believe me, it's actually like a light tinted brown, and it lets you know that some live changes were made to the script. And then when I refresh it, it's of course saved, and it will reload and execute the code. A number of other things you can do with live editing is, let's see if I can get to one more last thing. All right, out of town, but I'm going to have to show you one last thing, trying to squeeze all this in. So the call stack. Call stack is on this panel to the right, which I can't hardly see. Okay, all right. So the call stack, much like we did the functions before, I can, let's see, I'm going to expand the call stack. All right, we've executed that. I'm going to step into each function. And as I go into each function, the call stack is each function that's called, actually each call that's been made. I'm going to step through. Now I'm inside the second function, stepping in again. I'm in the third function. It just gives you exactly every call that's happened at this point. So again, if you can avoid the console log, it's basically logging as you've gone through the whole call stack. So again, a quick way to see what's going on with your code. And then, yeah, I think I'm out of time, guys, but come see me after. I have more to talk about if you guys have any questions. Let me skip through to my final slide. Also, I didn't get to talk about JS Hint, but if you have crappy code, definitely use something like JS Hint, which will allow you to pre-debug your code, and it will allow you to, not unit testing, not remote testing. We can talk more about that after if you guys come talk to me afterwards and with drinks or whatever. I have all these resources, these slides I can show you guys afterwards. But that's it for me. I need to give the time over to Chris number 2 there. Sorry.